Okay, one thing I noticed is since this gear is smaller, um, it these washers are too big, so they get in the way. I can't retract it far enough without getting these washers in the way. So we're gonna use different size washers. Okay, you can see that I use the washers that came with the kit. So it's a small one and the big one, and now it's the smaller washers give me enough room to push the bolt closer in towards the screw. Okay, now you just need to screw each of the bolts into the gear. And then you just need to twist this in until the yoke hits the top of the bolt head. And actually, I'm gonna lubricate this. Okay, I would use grease and not oil. So this is moly grease. Okay, so it's a 14mm socket, and you can use your wrench. I'm gonna use my electric impact, and we're gonna go forward. And it's off. Okay, we'll need to just unscrew these bolts. We got the tool off. This gear should come off. And you can see that has the same washer as the other one. And this one does have an X on it. You can see right there. There's the X. That's the side that points up. Because this washer is actually a spring washer, it curves upwards. It curves like that. And there's the gear, and it's splined. So you can see the spline right here. Just something to mention is these bolts are actually stamped with 8.8, which is the class. And don't get that confused with the grading, which is 8.8 class bolt, which these are equal to grade 5 bolts. So if they're graded, they'll have like tick marks, like they'll have like an eye, like 3 eyes on it, or 2 eyes, or 5 eyes. I think two or 3 hash marks on it means it's a grade 5 or 8. I can't remember which is which, but just don't get class confused with grade. Okay, here's the next one, and it's already set up. I'm just going to remove it. And it's off. Just like before, we gotta remove the bolts And just underneath each of these looks like they're bearings. So you can see a little bit of a score mark here. It's because those gears, it connected to these with friction and it spun with the bearings. And looks like there's circlips in here that you pull apart to release the bearing. So the tool's off and the gear's loose. And looks like the same thing. Should be an X on here, which there is right there. So this goes up, it's splined. There's where it splines to, right here on the gear, those splines. And it spun with this bearing. So these bearings still seem okay. They don't feel really loose. And I forgot to show this on the other gear, but they both have these things on the bottom. Kind of looks like a castle nut. Okay, so this isn't really a gear, I don't think. This is where the parking pawl, the little tooth, goes in and stops the transmission, stops the differential so your wheels don't move. So on this one, there's 2 needle bearings. So there's this one, and I'm not sure if there's a certain side that it needs to go back on, but I'm gonna keep it in order. And then there's this one. And see if there's a difference. Looks like there might be. This is the bottom side. So this is the top side. And we'll just keep them in order. And then I reassembled the tool with the extension on it, and I put the larger washers on. Those smaller washers, they kept falling through this hole, these holes, so that was getting pretty annoying. And this one, we'll just have to back this off. Okay, and then we're gonna screw in these bolts. And what I do is I screw it all the way until it hits bottom, and then I back it off a little bit. And then you'll want to double check that these two are pressed up against each other inside the coupler. So right there, it seems like it hit bottom. I back off a little bit. So then once you got both of them like that, just make sure that they're against each other inside the coupler. Okay, so here's the setup. they both hit bottom, and then I backed it off. And this thing looks like it's got two O-rings right here. So we'll just have to remember to replace those. Okay, I'm ready to remove the whatever that is. Okay, then I'm gonna unscrew the bolt. And then it looks like these washers weren't strong enough because it warped the washer. We're gonna take off this gear or whatever it is. Looks like there's some metal on top of here. Just be sure to clean all this metal debris in here. So this is what it looks like. Looks like it's splined too. And I'll check this, but hopefully this wear on here isn't that bad. And it's got the castle nut looking thing on the back, just like the other two. And just like the rest of them, it has a bearing, and here you can see the snap ring. I think you just spread it out and then you can take the bearing out. So that's good that these have retainers for each of these large bearings. Okay, I'm gonna remove this parking pole, this stopper, this, and the spring. Okay, so this bolt right here, you have to bend this tab off, and then you can unscrew this bolt. Okay, once you take the bolt off, you should be able to slide this off. And then the spring should just slide off too. And then, if you can see, there's a hole there. So that's why you have to have the transmission in neutral. So when this case slides off, that it'll pass through this this pin or whatever it is. Okay, just for reference, this is how it was put together. So just make sure you put it back in like that. And also, just for reference, it looks like there's a cotter pin there and a washer, and I don't see a reason to take that apart. And it looks like this piece right here is actually hollow on the bottom. Okay, before the middle part of the case, this part of the case can slide off, you have to actually, I think that's the reverse idler gear. You have to push it out of the way before this case can separate. So to get that, remove these two 12mm bolts. Okay, so this holder should come off. And obviously this part faced that way, faced out that way, because it went over the shaft here. So just like that. Okay, here's another look at the part. Okay, so that reverse idler gear, you can see it's got a washer on top of it, and inside there is actually two needle bearings stacked on top of each other. Okay, just a quick note. On that shaft right there, there's a gap here, so it's not resting on that shaft. And there's a piece of wood behind there, which is supporting that part of the transmission case. Okay, I think what we do is take this shaft off. And you can see that the step faces upwards. And this is a washer. I'm not sure if it has to be certain orientation. Probably not. Those holes probably just let fluid to go pass through to lubricate the needle bearings. That's what I'm guessing. So I don't think it has to be, but it was about that position. And then there should be two needle bearings. So there's one. And there's the other. And that should be it. So supposedly you just slide this down. And that should free up the case so you can separate it. It looks like there's actually a washer below it. I'm not sure if you gotta remove that, but I'll look at it later after the case comes off. Okay, and here's a closer look at the parts. Okay, I'm just going to mention this now in case I forget to later. These three case bearings they should be really easy to replace. Basically, you just take your circlip pliers and you're gonna spread these clips apart, and then you just lift up on this bearing and then drop the new one in. Well, you're going to spread this, drop the new one in, and then let go of the plier, and then you're going to push it down until it snaps. It snaps with the ring. The only thing you have to worry about is the orientation of these bearings, because if you can see, there's a groove on the side of the bearing. So let's say here's the bearing and the groove is on top. You have to just remember to have the groove on top instead of flipped upside down, and then it's on the wrong side. Because one of these bearings has the groove in the middle, one of them has it on the top, and one has it on the bottom. And it's probably a hint is probably which side you're looking at, because maybe the opposite side of the bearing looks different from the top side. So this one should be the same thing. There's a circlip right there, and this one has a circlip right here, and it should all be the same process. Okay, here's another look at that thing for the parking pawl. You see that pin? It looks like a split zigzag pin. And it doesn't move, so I wouldn't mess with it. But I'm guessing that this position right now is the neutral position. So it'll slide right through that hole when you try to separate the case. Okay, we should be ready to separate the midsection of the case. So basically just follow along the edge. Here's a seam where it's going to separate. So just follow along the edge. This looks like a 14mm bolt. So that one, this one, these right here. I think this one's already loose. This one's already loose. This one doesn't even look like, yeah, it doesn't even go down to the second part of the case, so not that bolt. So not that bolt. Looks like this one goes all the way down to the second part of the case. Looks like this one too. Looks like this one here. And maybe this one. This one looks like it goes down. This one, that's the drain plug. This one, probably not this one. This is a 10mm bolt. And this one, I'm not sure, but probably not. Maybe. So basically just go around and look at all the bolts around this thing. Just go all the way around and check out all the 14mm bolts. Loosen them all the way, and then we're going to attempt to separate the case. Okay, these are 14mm bolts. Okay, I'm having problems with this one. Okay, so believe it or not, none of that worked. So what I did to actually loosen this one is just get this really long breaker bar, and I used both of my hands to break this free, and it's already free, but for some reason it's either, I'm thinking it's rusted, it's oxidized in here, that's why it's so stuck. I've never seen my wrench not take any bolt off, so I'm probably gonna try to replace this if I can. And since it's already loosened, I can just use the wrench for the rest of the way. So maybe it's oxidized right here. Maybe that's why it was stuck. And then to figure out which bolt this one is, I think Honda lists each part in millimeters. So actually this is inches. So we're just gonna continue around and get the rest of the bolts. And that one might have the same problem. And probably that one too. So I'll keep trying to get this bolt and this bolt off. But after that, this case should be free. You'll just want to check all the bolts around here before you try to pry this case off.